The idea of non-human creatures living among us seems like something out of a science fiction script, but for decades it has been circulating more convincingly behind the scenes of power and entertainment. The reptilian theory, initially marginalized, found fertile ground in a society fascinated by the occult and distrustful of traditional structures. What was once just a rumor in obscure internet forums is now gaining space in popular debates, independent investigations, and video recordings that, for many, are irrefutable proof that something, or someone, is hiding beneath the skin of celebrities. Slow-motion videos, live broadcasts, and unedited interviews have begun to be scoured by watchful eyes claiming to have found unsettling patterns. Horizontal blinks, unusual pupil movements, language lapses, and mechanical gestures. Doubt has been cast, and with it, a new way of viewing the glow of fame. Could some of the most influential figures in global pop culture be operating under non-human control? Or is all of this just a conspiratorial construct shaped by collective paranoia? Welcome to another night where mysteries never sleep. I'm Midnight, and this is 7 Nights. Before we begin, I'd like to ask for your help. Like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. It's just one click, but it makes a huge difference for YouTube to show the videos to more people, and for me to keep bringing this content to you. I'm counting on you. Let's get into the video. Among the ruins of the earliest human civilizations, records of reptilian creatures appear as persistent echoes of something that was never fully forgotten. From Mesopotamian temples to indigenous oral traditions, serpent figures were described as entities with power over fertility, death, and above all, hidden knowledge. These representations did not appear in isolation. There are too many patterns to ignore. How could peoples who never crossed paths report such similar beings? In Sumer, for instance, we find the Anunnaki, figures described as those who came from the sky. For mainstream archaeology, these deities are merely part of a mythological pantheon. But for alternative scholars, these beings were extraterrestrial visitors who interacted with early humanity. Their physical depiction, often with elongated eyes, large skulls, and upright posture, gave rise to the theory that they were not just gods, but non-human hybrids. And what if the myth is a fragmented version of real contact? Centuries later, the serpent figure continued to haunt religions. In the Bible, it is the first to corrupt humanity. In Hinduism, the Nagas, semi-divine serpents, inhabit underground realms and can assume human form. These accounts, when placed side by side, construct a narrative line that doesn't seem so fantastical. Is there something symbolic in all of this? Or are we looking at an oral tradition that has been trying for millennia to warn us about something that truly lives among us? The turning point for the modern popularization of this idea occurred in the final decades of the 20th century with British researcher David Icke. His research, initially treated as eccentric, gained traction as he brought together mythology, politics, and historical events into a single theory: that an interdimensional reptilian race controls the fate of the planet, hidden beneath familiar faces. Icke named names, dates, power structures, and above all, bloodlines. According to him, these beings are not just among us, but have inherited power over generations, camouflaged under human identities. Contrary to what many think, Icke did not present mere speculation. He cross-referenced data on symbols used by royal families, described ancient rituals, and analyzed historical documents. His work was ridiculed by part of the press, but it made a huge impact. And the more institutions tried to discredit him, the more people began to listen. What makes someone question social consensus to the point of believing that rulers may not be exactly human? As the internet expanded, forums like Godlike Productions, Above Top Secret, and even Occult communities at the time began sharing videos, images, and reports about so-called reptilian disguises. It was in this environment that the first viral videos began to emerge, live broadcasts in which public figures displayed eyes with unusual movements, sideways blinks, or a brief change in skin texture. It was no longer enough to deny it. The images were there, and anyone could pause and rewatch. But was it a technical glitch or a camouflage failure? The images that most impressed the public didn't come from secret files, but from accessible places: talk show interviews, public ceremonies, sports events. In many of these recordings, there are moments when something simply doesn't look right. A stare that's too fixed, a blink out of sync, an instant when the light reflects strangely in someone's eyes. Defenders of the theory claim, it's in these brief moments that the truth slips out. The reptilian theory began to connect with another concept, that certain groups keep humanity in a constant state of distraction. And what is the most efficient environment for that? Pop culture. Musicians, actors, and influencers became natural targets of this line of thought. After all, are they there to entertain or to hypnotize? The stage, then, would not be just an artistic space but a true symbolic altar. It didn't take long for symbols associated with serpents, vertical eyes, and scaly skin to start appearing in music videos and performances. Some said it was just aesthetic provocation. Others saw in these details validation that the artists knew or actively participated in the act. The question is, why repeat the same visual elements that fuel suspicion if it's all just a misunderstanding? David Icke also introduced a concept that further expanded the scope of the conspiracy. The idea that the reality we perceive is only a frequency, and that these beings operate in a dimension slightly outside our perception. They would be interdimensional, and the human disguise would not be merely physical, but vibrational. This would explain why only in certain moments, under certain angles or lighting conditions, their true features seem to emerge. Despite all the controversy, many serious researchers began to investigate in depth the symbology and behavioral patterns of public figures. They discovered, for example, that some families in the entertainment industry are genetically linked to aristocratic groups in Europe. Coincidence? Maybe. But why do certain surnames and traits seem to repeat among the big names of the industry, generation after generation? The resistance to openly talking about the topic might be the most revealing aspect. Anyone who mentions reptilians is immediately labeled a conspiracy theorist, even when presenting data, records, or historical patterns. This automatic reaction prevents debate, and in that silence, doubt grows stronger. After all, why are so many people so bothered by a theory that, in theory, shouldn't threaten anyone? The theory may seem unlikely, but that doesn't make it dismissible. On the contrary, it is precisely in the improbabilities that the great systems hide. And if, for a moment, you allow yourself not to discard it, but to investigate, what else might you find? At some point in the last decade, people began to notice the details. Not the big speeches, nor the latest controversies, but something subtler. They blinked and they saw. Frame by frame, live videos began to be dissected like never before. It was no longer a theory written in obscure forms. It was image. It was movement. And it was too strange to ignore. The case that opened the doors to this new phase happened on national television. A news anchor, in the middle of a live broadcast, had her image paused and analyzed. What seemed like just a normal blink took on another interpretation when, in slow motion, the movement revealed an unusual direction, horizontal. Like reptilian eyes. The video spread like wildfire. And no matter how much the network explained it as a technical glitch, the public saw it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. After that, it was as if a new lens had been placed over every public appearance. A growing number of internet users began to observe the eye behavior of celebrities, politicians, and artists in almost microscopic detail. One of the most frequent targets was Justin Bieber. During an interview, the camera caught a quick change in the shape of his pupil, accompanied by a faint greenish glow. When the video was slowed down, many pointed out that it wasn't a reflection, it was something beyond the lens. And it didn't stop there. In a video recorded in a Florida courtroom, while Bieber was answering a series of legal questions, his gaze fixed on a point without blinking for long seconds. A zoom applied to the image revealed an anomalous texture near his neck, resembling scales. Was it a poorly placed shadow? A compression artifact in the video? Or another sign? Eminem also went through similar situations. In an interview backstage at a music event, he remained motionless for almost a minute with a completely blank expression. No blinking, no reaction. The public was divided. Something was clearly off, but no one could say exactly what. Some attributed it to exhaustion. Others saw it as a lapse in maintaining the human form. A programming glitch, perhaps? These videos began to pile up like pieces of a puzzle. And at this point, many channels started to investigate seriously. With editing and slowdown software, the suspicious moments were extracted, analyzed, compared, and patterns began to emerge. It wasn't just a matter of seeing what you want to see. It was about seeing what had been ignored. The eyes, always the eyes. Asynchronous blinks, unusual reflective glow, momentary changes in shape. Some argue this is due to digital artifacts, typical video glitches. But then why don't the same glitches happen frequently in regular interviews with anonymous people? Why do they seem to concentrate specifically on public figures with massive influence? Scenes like these became expected. Instagram lives, award show broadcasts, unedited interviews, all became fertile ground for attentive eyes. A striking example occurred during a European award show. A singer, smiling at a camera, abruptly turned her head, and in that movement, something shined in her eyes. A golden, opaque light, different from a normal reflection. It didn't take long for slowed-down videos to appear showing the same scene from different angles. And the more it was watched, the stranger it became. The questions began to pile up. Was it all just technical failure? A play of light and shadow? Or were these moments actually leaks of a hidden identity? It's important to remember that the defenders of this theory don't claim these people are possessed or ghosts. What's said is that they're not exactly human. And these moments would be camouflage failures, cracks in the code. A curious detail is that, in many of these videos, the facial expression also changes. Muscles lock, posture stiffens, body language disconnects from the context. As if the person were frozen, calculating how to react. These silent moments generate more discomfort than any speech. Because you can't rehearse a gaze. You either are, or you're not. Some specialists began to analyze these recordings more technically. Editing professionals, visual neuroscience experts, even people from the advertising world joined in. And in several cases, what they saw was the same, a strangeness that wasn't easy to explain. It wasn't enough to say it was a pixel issue. The eye movement, the blink speed, the glow incompatible with the environment, everything indicated that something didn't fit the human pattern. Even more recent videos showed similar behavior in political broadcasts. During a press conference in Washington, for example, a security advisor's face glowed abnormally for a few seconds. The skin texture seemed to ripple slightly under lighting that hadn't changed. It was quick but visible enough to generate thousands of reactions. Why do these anomalies always happen in front of cameras? Could these presences be linked to the need for direct influence over the public? The most common argument among skeptics is that all this comes down to optical illusions. And yes, that's a possibility. But to what extent can we ignore so many similar records, coming from different sources, from different countries, involving completely unrelated figures? When the pattern repeats too often, it ceases to be coincidence. It becomes evidence. And perhaps the most intriguing part is this. You don't have to believe 100% in the reptilian theory to admit that something strange is happening. The question in this case isn't do they exist, but rather, why are we seeing all of this now? Have you ever noticed how some of the biggest artists on the planet, at the height of fame, begin to adopt strange symbols, repetitive gestures, mechanical gazes? For a long time, these behaviors were treated as artistic eccentricities. But when repetition becomes a pattern, is it really all just aesthetics, or are we looking at a code? Just watch the major award shows. Meticulously choreographed performances, ritualistic lighting, costumes inspired by pagan gods, vertical eyes drawn in makeup, and performances that seem more like occult enactments than musical presentations. Of course, there's always the excuse of artistic freedom. But the burning question is, why do the same symbols, the same gestures, the same narratives always reappear? At one of the most talked about VMAs in recent years, a pop artist appeared surrounded by dancers wearing serpent masks, singing about rebirth and transformation. At a certain point in the performance, the lights went out, and a close-up revealed her eyes with contact lenses simulating vertical pupils. Some said it was just part of the show, but for those already investigating, that was a symbolic nod, a gesture for those who know what they're seeing. These moments are carefully rehearsed. Nothing there happens by chance. The hand gestures, the symbols in the stage background, the lighting choices, everything is handpicked. There's a narrative behind the performance, and in many cases, it goes unnoticed by the general audience. But those who pay attention see the pattern forming: serpents, single eyes, triangles, artificial skin, identity transformations. Why has this visual set become so recurring? Many artists start their careers with a natural, even innocent image. But as they gain international projection, they undergo an aesthetic and behavioral transformation. Their gaze changes, their gestures evolve, and the themes they address shift. They begin to use symbolic visual language that directly references the occult. Is this transformation part of artistic maturation? or the reflection of a transition that happens away from the spotlight. Several insiders from the music industry have already revealed that there are stages the artist must go through. Contracts involving absolute silence, image control, and a rigid routine of events, interviews, and training. Some former producers claim that these programs aim to mold the artist into becoming an influential, yet controllable figure. The stage, in this sense, is no longer just a set, but a tool. And this is where the reptilian theory returns with force. According to scholars of this line, many of these artists would be hybrids, part human, part reptilian, used as agents of mass influence. The stage, then, serves to emotionally feed the public, who give attention, energy, and even faith. Could the show be a kind of collective control ritual? This control, by the way, seems to intensify at specific moments. Just observe the behavior of certain stars in post-show interviews. They appear disoriented, with disconnected speech, a fixed stare, as if they were readjusting to something. In a curious case, a famous singer was interviewed right after an intense performance. When asked about his inspiration, he remained silent for several seconds and replied, "I wasn't there. Something else sang for me." That was taken as a metaphor. But what if it wasn't? The public consumes these performances en masse, often without realizing the symbols they're absorbing. In a world where image is worth more than speech, it's in the visual details that messages hide. Some choreographies repeat gestures from ancient rituals, others include enactments of possession, body swapping, or even physical transformation. All of this, of course, under the label of art. But is that all it is? And what happens when an artist breaks the script? Several who tried to expose the backstage were pushed aside, canceled, or in more extreme cases, involved in suspicious situations. Theorists claim that by breaking away from the system, these figures become unstable for control. Some say they were replaced. Others, that they simply disappeared from the narrative. The relationship between extreme fame and loss of identity is nothing new. But if we add this to the visual glitches already mentioned, the strange behaviors, and the reptilian aesthetics that infiltrate performances, perhaps the equation changes. Perhaps we are facing something that goes beyond industry control. Something involving genetic manipulation, ritual symbolism, and social camouflage. The serpent has always been a symbol of forbidden wisdom. And perhaps that's why it's so commonly used in these contexts. It represents transformation, but also deception. On a stage lit by thousands of spotlights, it's easy to hide what shouldn't be seen. But what if the signs are there all along, and no one's really paying attention? Of course, one might say this is all overinterpretation, that these are just stylistic coincidences. But in that case, here's the question. Why do so many artists from different countries and cultures insist on using the same visual codes? Why, with so much creativity available, is reptilian symbolism the one that gets repeated the most? And perhaps the most unsettling part of it all is realizing that the stage is not the only place where these signs appear. They follow the artists off camera, backstage, in public appearances, and even in casual interviews. So the final question of this chapter isn't just what are they showing us, but rather, what have they already let slip, and we still haven't noticed? Technology changed the game. What was once just theory can now be paused, zoomed in, slowed down, and observed with surgical precision. And that's exactly what's happening. People all over the world, with time, curiosity, and access to editing software, began doing what no one expected, investigating in detail what cameras capture, and what perhaps they weren't supposed to capture. In the past, supposed reptilian glitches in live broadcasts could be dismissed as poor video quality. But with 4K cameras, slow-motion features, and capture rates of 60 or 120 frames per second, that argument has become increasingly fragile. Now, every micro-expression can be analyzed. Every blink outside the norm, every strange reflection in the eyes. And when these videos are watched in slow motion, what was once imperceptible becomes disturbing. At a recent concert by a global pop star, a fan posted a video recorded with her latest generation phone. She had captured a simple moment, the singer waving to the crowd. But when the footage was slowed down, something appeared. For 2 frames, the artist's eyes, which seemed normal, took on an intense greenish glow, followed by a horizontal blink. 2 frames. Too fast to notice live. But not for someone who knows what to look for. This video spread like wildfire. Soon, specialized channels began analyzing the same moment with stabilization and color enhancement software. The pattern was the same as in other sightings: momentary alteration in skin texture, eyes with lateral movement, and a brief delay in lip synchronization. It may seem small, but for those following these cases, it's more than enough to raise an eyebrow. And the more the videos are analyzed, the more these patterns repeat. A famous Hollywood actor was caught in an interview where, for less than half a second, his iris split into two tones. A dark arc appeared in the center, as if there were an overlay. When slowed down, the movement of the facial muscles also seemed off, as if the system was recalibrating. Another intriguing recording occurred at a charity event, broadcast simultaneously by different networks. During the ceremony, a very influential businessman appeared on stage. In one of the broadcasts, his facial image seemed stable, but in the other, captured by a side camera, his face showed small distortions during movement. The curious thing is that this didn't happen with any of the other guests, only with him. This discrepancy between cameras sparked a new hypothesis. What if certain equipment captures frequencies differently? What if these reptilian disguises aren't just visual, but also vibrational? Some physics scholars speculate that camouflaged structures may vibrate at frequencies outside the common visible spectrum, but detectable by specific lenses. If true, then the right camera might indeed capture what the naked eye cannot see. Many videos are quickly dismissed as fakes, but when you have 3 cameras from different sources capturing the same phenomenon at the same moment, the explanation becomes more complicated. And it's precisely in these cases that the videos start to disturb. Not because they prove something conclusively, but because they cast doubt where there once was certainty. It is within this new generation of evidence that theories become more dangerous or more revealing. Because now it's not just about belief. These are visual data. These are public images. No secret files or poorly filmed videos in basements. These are high-definition recordings available for anyone to analyze. The problem is that once you see it, you can't unsee it. Skeptics say the human mind sees what it wants to see. But in this case, the question needs to be flipped. What if it's precisely because we're distracted that we never saw it? Because now that we know what to look for, these moments are everywhere. In events, music videos, interviews. The question is, have they always been there, or are they becoming more frequent? And if the answer is that they've always been there, that raises an even heavier question. How long have we been watched by eyes that are not like ours? In certain videos, analysts don't focus only on the eyes or the skin. They begin to observe the micromuscular behavior of the face, irregular breathing, the response time between a question and an answer. And when you start to put all these signs together, you realize that some of these public figures act far too differently to be natural. The danger here isn't just what is being seen, it's what might soon be seen. If these visual glitches keep increasing, there may come a time when a slip happens live, with no chance for editing. And when that happens, how will the world react? Perhaps the future of investigation is no longer in words, but in pixels, in frames hidden between frames, in eyes that, for an instant, reveal what lies beneath the skin. And the question that remains is, are we ready to look back? At first glance, it may seem like an exaggeration. A music video with green lighting, scale-like makeup, vertical eyes drawn into costumes, all of this could simply be aesthetics, right? But what if the same symbols appear across dozens of artists repeatedly at different events, in different countries, across different genres? The repetition begins to raise an uncomfortable hypothesis. Could these elements be more than just visual choices? If you've never noticed before, start here. The all-seeing eye, the pyramid, the serpent coiled around the body, painted vertical pupils, limbs positioned in reverence like in ancient cults. All of this isn't confined to a single video, but scattered across music videos, album covers, entire choreographies. And the most curious part, these images often appear subtly, as if they weren't meant to be noticed, and yet they're always there. In a concert by one of the biggest pop singers of today, the dancers' costumes formed, at the end of the choreography, the image of a central eye. Above them, golden and green lights created moving scales. The main camera deliberately captured this from above, creating an almost hypnotic effect. Visual coincidence? Or an embedded message? If we take a closer look at the most popular music videos of the last decade, we'll find an abundance of references to reptilian symbols. Snake statues, reptile eyes, stylized forked tongues, people crawling like serpents. The question is, who is choosing these visual elements? And why do they keep appearing? Many art directors defend themselves by saying it's all part of pop mythology, something designed to provoke and generate engagement. But the symbolism is far too ancient and far too specific to be mere modern provocation. For centuries, serpents have symbolized forbidden knowledge, manipulation, and transformation, precisely the central themes of the performances where these symbols most frequently appear. And when you start connecting the dots, you realize that the biggest moments of success for some artists coincide with the adoption of these visual codes. At first, they're subtle, a strange-shaped necklace, an abstract stage background. But later, they take over the entire set. An entire music video can transform into a symbolic ritual, with narratives of rebirth, possession, and transfiguration. You've probably seen those performances where the artist seems to die on stage, only to be reborn with a new identity. Some call it a metaphor for fame, others a symbolic ritual of surrender. But what if it's more literal than it seems? Some semiotic scholars claim that these enactments replicate ancient invocation rituals, and the symbols that appear on costumes, sets, and digital projections are nearly identical to those used in esoteric cults. Another detail, the use of close-up shots of eyes. In many videos, the eye is the central element. It appears isolated, surrounded by light, or covered in digital scales. In one particular music video, the artist's eye transforms into that of a reptile, with a vertical pupil, greenish skin, and a metallic glow. It's not subtle. It's direct. And it's on the official channel, with over 100 million views. The question is, why normalize this kind of imagery? And why doesn't the public question it? Perhaps because they're used to it, or maybe because the visual appeal is strong enough to distract from the message. But those who start paying attention notice that the symbols are becoming less and less symbolic. They're becoming literal. And the more explicit they are, the more they seem like perception tests. As if saying, let's see who's paying attention. Award shows follow the same pattern. In 2019, during a globally renowned event, an artist performed inside a giant egg-like capsule, surrounded by green lights and hissing sound effects. Upon emerging from the capsule, their eyes were covered with reptilian lenses, and their dance mimicked the movements of a snake ready to strike. No journalist mentioned it. No host seemed surprised. Is the public being trained to accept it? This kind of symbolism isn't limited to music. It's present in fashion, advertising, and film. Designers from major fashion houses have released entire collections featuring scales, vertical eyes, and fabrics that change texture under light. In perfume campaigns, models appear with fixed stares, cold, almost inhuman skin. The industry seems to be normalizing the reptilian image as part of the new aesthetic. And the most intriguing part, when confronted, artists usually dodge the question. They laugh it off, say it's just a joke, or ignore it entirely. But there are exceptions. Some have claimed they don't have creative control over their music videos and shows. Others have said they don't remember the creative process behind certain projects. Doesn't that at least raise some suspicion? And here comes the darkest question. What if these symbols aren't just artistic expression, but part of a code, a kind of visual language that signals belonging or submission to something greater? After all, why repeat the same elements for so long if they serve no specific purpose? The symbolism has always been there, but now, with more attentive eyes, it's no longer invisible. And the question that arises when watching a new music video or performance is simple, direct, and unavoidable. Is this just art, or is it a coded message for those who know how to read it? Up to this point, the question has been, who are they? But now, perhaps the most important question is, why are they here? If we accept the hypothesis of reptilian infiltration among celebrities, the most unsettling doubt immediately arises. What exactly are these entities seeking by hiding behind fame? The most repeated answer among theorists is simple and direct: energetic and behavioral control of the masses. Fame is not just a reward or a lifestyle, but a strategic mechanism. A globally recognized artist has daily access to millions of people. They can influence moods, behavior, habits, even how we think. This isn't entertainment. This is power. According to some scholars of modern occultism, there's an ancient concept called energy harvesting. The idea is that crowds gathered in intense emotional states, like extreme joy, fear, euphoria, or adoration, generate an energy field that can be absorbed. In other words, concerts would be more than performances. They'd be modern rituals of emotional extraction. And if we observe through that lens, a lot begins to make sense. Pulsing lights, repetitive beats, synchronized movements, hypnotic lyrics. Everything designed to elevate the audience to an altered state of consciousness. During such a performance, how many people truly keep their critical thinking turned on? Very few. And that's the moment when suggestion takes hold. When the transfer happens, some reports go a step further. There are claims that certain backstage areas of major tours are heavily restricted, with high-level access control and the constant presence of people no one quite knows, technicians, producers, or agents with invisible credentials and different behavior. Could these collaborators be the true managers of the operation? David Icke and other researchers suggest that reptilians not only manipulate, but also need human adoration to maintain their form or influence on this plane of existence. The figure of the modern idol in this context becomes the perfect tool. It receives devotion, applause, attention, and with that, energy. We're talking about a structure far more elaborate than it seems. And this doesn't stop at the stage. Advertisements, social media, motivational speeches, any form of mass communication can be used for this purpose. That's why the infiltrated artists must be charismatic, captivating, and at the same time, obedient. When one slips out of control, the system shuts down. The image is destroyed. The career dismantled. Sometimes, the person simply vanishes from the spotlight without explanation. There's also a complementary theory that certain elite groups make deals with these entities. A sort of symbiosis, earthly power in exchange for influence over humanity. In this scenario, major record labels, production companies, and conglomerates would act as intermediaries, and the artists as receivers and transmitters. Many of these artists, in fact, show unusual physical signs throughout their careers. Abrupt bodily changes, an appearance that doesn't age, resilience beyond normal to exhausting routines. Some maintain a youthful appearance for decades, despite inhuman schedules. Is it genetics? Lifestyle? Or is something beyond common biology at work? Supporters of this theory aren't saying that all celebrities are reptilians, but rather that some carefully selected ones are. And their overwhelming success isn't the result of talent, but of a pre-designed system. A system where the chosen ones have the mission to entertain, distract, and harvest. And the public, what do they gain from it? Entertainment? Inspiration? Maybe. But they also give away time, attention, data, emotions. And the truth is, whoever controls these factors controls everything. That's why, for outside observers, it becomes clear, fame, in this case, isn't the goal. It's the tool. The shows, the music videos, the interviews, all may seem spontaneous. But the script was written long ago, and the more you observe, the harder it becomes to believe all of this is just coincidence. After all, if these beings really exist, do you think they'd choose a quiet place? Or center stage? When you put all these pieces together, what emerges is not just a theory but a pattern. A cycle that repeats before our eyes. Symbols, behaviors, visual glitches, carefully staged narratives. What once seemed like exaggeration now gains consistency, not through absolute proof, but through the accumulation of quiet clues on every screen, in every show, in every offbeat blink. The serpent, after all, never appears directly. It slithers, hides, watches, and when it realizes it's no longer being ignored, it sheds its skin. Maybe the truth isn't in grand secrets, but in the details we overlook daily, in the abnormal gleam of an eye, in the recurring symbol at the back of a stage, in the rehearsed silence during an interview. Maybe the question is no longer, are they among us? But rather, how much longer will we pretend we haven't seen? This story is just one piece, and one day, maybe you'll see the whole puzzle. If this made you think, subscribe, like the video. It helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share. After all, more voices mean more discoveries.